I used to have a job I loved. I was the assistant director at a rapidly growing nonprofit organization with a mission I was so passionate about. I worked with the smartest, coolest people I knew, and I couldn't wait to get out of bed every morning and go to work. Until about 5 years ago, when all of a sudden I realized I just used to love my job. See, I just had my second child, a little boy. And you know how you're supposed to take 6 weeks or 12 weeks off for maternity leave? Well, I took a whole week. So, not surprisingly, a couple months later, I found myself in the throes of a very deep, dark depression. And this had ramifications in my whole life, from my relationship with my family to my boss to my work. All of that was suffering, and it was challenging. And meanwhile, my staff all had to deal with the tensions that were building between my boss and I and their own crises at work. We had a broken corporate culture, but there was something a lot bigger at work as well. During this time, my staff and I used to cry a lot at work. So we'd sit in my office and we'd have meetings, and almost inevitably, we would all start crying at some point. We'd go to breakfast and eat pancakes and cry some more. And in one of these tearful meetings, it was just a one-on-one, my direct report and I were rehashing what was going on with her untenable situation at work. She was being set up to fail. I could see that, and she could see that, and when we both looked at it, we recognized that actually there was nothing that we could do to change it. We were powerless to affect the situation because we had all the responsibility and none of the authority. We were just professional scapegoats. And in that moment, something changed for me forever. Because I stopped pretending like it was going to get better or that I could somehow change things. Even though I was technically the second in command, I just recognized that things were going to be this way. And so I looked at her and I got really honest and I said, look, I'm not going to fire you. You don't deserve to be fired. But I really, really want you to go look for another job. And behind her tears, her eyes steeled. And she looked at me and said, I am not a quitter. And I'm not a quitter either. And for the first time, I recognized that maybe not quitting was actually holding me back.
Quitting and how it's really not a loser's tale, it's more of a winner's tale. So that's what I got out of it.
I thought that Sarai, her speech was so incredible. It was really brave. I thought, I could really relate to her talking about quitting and being empowered from quitting and getting the opportunity to restart your life.
But I didn't know what else to do. I was so identified with this job. I thought that I was this job. I didn't know who I was outside of it. I thought that if I left, that maybe I would just disappear, that I wouldn't matter anymore to anybody. And I'm not the only one that thinks that way. I think a lot of us get really identified with what we do. We think we are our job titles, or we think we are our string of successes. We even think that we're our failures. But that's not true. We get to a point in our lives many, many times where we get a sense of discomfort with things. We think maybe we're not totally comfortable in our jobs anymore. Maybe things aren't quite working out in some of our key relationships. Somebody earlier talked about having to leave behind friendships. We have these questions come up for us about that, and we wonder, what if things were different? Well, what if they were different? The thing that happens when we get to that is that we actually have just 3 choices to make. And we think that it's really complicated and really confusing, but the truth is it's just 3 things, and I'm going to tell you what they are right now. The first choice that we could make, when we recognize that things aren't comfortable and things aren't working, maybe we've outgrown something, or maybe it's time for us to move on, we could just try to unsee what we've seen. We could try to get smaller, and we can crush ourselves back into that little box that we've been living in all along. We stifle our power. We hope it just suffocates so that we can get some peace and quiet and not have to worry about it anymore. Sidebar, the other day I was shopping for something to wear to this. I did not buy anything. This is an old dress, and it's a dress for a reason, which you're going to find out in a second. I wanted to buy some pants because I'd been in this place where I was growing more and more uncomfortable in my existing pants because my body had expanded beyond the size that the pants would accommodate. And so there were a lot of days in recent months where I was like putting on my pants, like squishing into them. I don't know if any of you ever had to suffer through this, but it's a thing. So pulling them on, like wriggling into them, leaning back, buttoning the button so that there's enough like tension between the zipper and like the gap will close so you can zip it up really quick and then you go about your day with your handy dandy muffin top. And I was doing this a lot. Well, that's sort of the same thing that we do when we're squishing ourselves back into the little box that we've lived in forever. Second choice, instead, we could choose to inhabit our power, rise to the occasion, and take up all the space that our immensity calls for now. Even if we don't know how that's going to work or what we're going to do instead or any of that, we can figure that out as we go because we know we can trust ourselves to do it. Third choice, possibly the most common choice, we could also just choose not to choose. And when we do that, we give away our power. We say, I'm not really up for this yet. I'm not sure what I want to do. I don't think my boyfriend loves me anymore. I'm going to just wait this out. Or, I think my boss might be trying to get rid of me at work, but I'm just going to see if she's going to fire me. So we just wait. It's like a standoff. And we hope that our stubbornness will pay off. And the reason why that choosing not to choose is actually great is because it gives us an out. Because at least when we're choosing not to choose, we're not being quitters. And being quitters is like this great cultural sin that we all think is wrong and bad. I was driving around my town recently, and I came across a church reader board with a Mike Ditka quote on it. It said, "You're never a loser until you quit." And since I think about quitting all the time, that really struck me. I felt like it was inspiring to have a church reader board insinuate I might be a loser. But we've heard these things all the time. You hear that quitters or winners never quit, quitters never win, that it's always too early to quit, never quit. But the truth is, when we choose to leave something that no longer fits us and no longer suits us, we're actually making all this space in our lives for as much transformation as we can allow. Oh, thank you. Wow, so much interaction. I wasn't expecting this. Wow, jeez. The thing that we do when we finally decide to leave something is like taking a flying leap off of the edge of a cliff into the waters below. Our whole tribe is standing on the cliff with us, waving us goodbye or turning their backs on us because they think we're nuts. And we wave at them, sometimes with just one finger, because we're so frustrated and exhausted by the time we let ourselves do this. You know what I'm talking about. Some of us have epic quit stories. So you jump off that cliff and then you're flying through the air. And if you've ever leapt off of a high dive or off of a cliff into water, you know what I'm talking about. It's this exciting, immense feeling. It's, I'm flying, I'm soaring, I am free. And it feels amazing. And then, just like in real life, we hit the water. I have a cousin. When she was 10, she agreed to jump off of a high dive for $1, belly flop. And she did. And I still remember to this day the color of her skin afterwards, which was very red. It hurts to do this. So hitting the water feels like rock bottom. We think it is. We're like, this is all over. I'm going to question all my life choices. What was I thinking? Why did I jump off of this cliff? Who am I to even make this decision? And we have a choice here as well. We could kick and scream and thrash and try to find our way to find a rock or to hold on to a branch and just get safe. But better water safety tip. Instead, we could relax into the water, breathe out, watch which way those bubbles float so we know which way is up. Breathe out again. Let ourselves find our footing under the water on the ground, kick back up, float back to the top, and resurface. And I'll tell you what, this place under the water, this neither up nor down place that we don't know what's going to happen or who we are, where we're going, is the place where transformation happens. And it is hard and lonely, and it's also the most beautiful, stark place that you'll ever see. I was finding the bottom 2 years ago. I finally had left my job a year before that, And between that time and that whole year, I also ended up leaving my marriage, my church, my whole religion, and I found myself without a lot of mooring. And in this place of not knowing what was going on, I was letting go of all of the external things that had once defined me. I was stripped bare of all of that external definition. And I learned how to receive, and I learned how to ask for what I needed, and I learned that no matter what, I was always radically supported. And in the end, it was just me. And I was left with this bright, shining, resilient soul, resolute in the face of poverty, losing everything. And you know what? I was okay. I was more than okay. I was enough. And I've always been enough. And you're enough. And you'll always be enough.
Quitting is really hard, and a lot of times you feel really bad about it because it's unnatural to quit and you feel uncomfortable, but I really love what Sarai had to say and how you got to take that challenge head on, and how when you quit, you give yourself a fresh start, and it's a great way to live your life.
When your energy isn't in that environment, then maybe you should let it go and then try to find new energy. And so I really got a lot out of that because I can relate to her. I've done a lot of what people call is quitting, but it's more so revitalizing the energy in the space.
You know, a few years ago I had my dream job and I quit, and it was the scariest thing I ever did, and now I'm happier than ever. And to hear her up on that stage tell that story, I just thought it was incredible and inspiring, and I hope that it encourages other people to make the same jump.
Leaving, when we learn to do it well, gets a little bit easier. We start to recognize those opportunities for what they are. When we get that discomfort, we start to see, oh, I have an opportunity to make a choice. I could stay this way and pretend like I don't know what's happening, get smaller, and just live here. I could choose not to choose. Or I could rise to this occasion, and I can take that flying leap off of this cliff into another pool below. And when you do that, you become courageous, you become fearless, you become free, and you become all you are meant to be. Thank you.